Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off, because today I'll be reviewing and paging through the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik Companion from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. Is this an invaluable resource for game masters running Death on the Reik, or is this just filled with minutia that you can easily take a pass on when running the Enemy Within campaign? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I'm going to be reviewing the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik Companion from Cubicle 7 Entertainment. It's written by Jim Barbara, Graham Davis, Klaus Thorne Ekstrom, Phil Gallagher, Andy Law, and Saren O'Brien, with artwork provided by Ralph Horsley, Joseph Kuchera, Safari Levente. Taking a guess on some of these names. I apologize. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing some of these folks. Sam Manley, Roxandra Oneida, Jonathan O'Donohue, Scott Purdy, Aaron Ray, Alexandru Sabo, Matteo Spirito, Giacomo Tapaner, Tom Ventre, and Danielle Kovacs. The 126-page hardcover is available now. It does carry an MSRP of $34.99. You can score that and the PDF together if you place your order at Cubicle 7 Entertainment. You can get the PDF alone at WFRP for $17.99. Do want to mention that the Gaming Gang is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit WFRP, please stop by at thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, we get a little portion of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. All right, without further ado, let's swing on over to the other camera, because here we have the Death on the Reik Companion. Do want to mention the fine folks over at Cubicle 7 Entertainment were kind enough to send me this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this book with you. These days, it's really important that you know that. All right, I already reviewed Death on the Reik. Really love it. I love the new director's cut and gave it a 9.5 out of 10. I liked it that much. So Death on the Reik Companion is obviously enough a companion piece to the second chapter of the Enemy Within campaign. Let's flip on over to the back. I'm not going to read everything from the back of the book here, but the Death on the Reik Companion is an indispensable guide to the second part of the epic Enemy Within campaign, the groundbreaking Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventure that inspired a generation of gamers. Packed with additional rules, optional NPCs, tantalizing adventure hooks, and sound advice for new and veteran GMs alike, is the perfect addition to enhance your experience of the Enemy Within or any other WFRP adventure. Also included are new rules, the Warrior Znich career, new river creatures, and the Emperor Leopold, a luxury barge with a bevy of secrets in its holds and staterooms. The Death on the Reik Companion is the perfect addition to any group playing the Enemy Within or any other campaign set on the rivers and waterways of the Empire. I am going to stay picture-in-picture up here in the corner, so just so you know. So as we take a look at this, and I am not going to take a look at each and every page, we'll kind of skip through. I am going to be cutting off a little bit of the book as well, just so you know. So we're going to start off, we get a bit of the history of the adventure. We get some guest appearances from one of the artists from the original Death on the Reik, as well as the proprietor of Hogshead Publishing, which picked up Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay after originally Games Workshop stopped supporting it. And then, of course, the 4th edition is now available through our friends over at Cubicle 7 Entertainment. So we've got some guest commentary. We got some Easter eggs as well. And then we jump into some additional rules. And I had to say, more than half of this book is devoted to rules that can be utilized and content that can be utilized outside of just Death on the Reich. So out of the various different fantasy role-playing game settings that I know fairly well, I would have to say the old world really has like major arteries of transportation are riverbound as opposed to many other role-playing games out there. Now, of course, I'm sure there's something out there that I'm not aware of, but when I think of, for an example, Galarian or Forgotten Realms, I don't think of river travel. Whereas all throughout the old world in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, we're constantly running across transport and characters making their travels to various destinations by way of river. So we're going to get into this first section. This first section is all talking about different herbs. Then we get into some deleted scenes. When I did my review for Death on the Reich, I talked about a pretty well-known encounter that takes place on the river, on the Reich, the largest river in the Empire. And I was kind of surprised that it had been cut from the director's cut of Death on the Reich, because I know it was something that a lot of gamers recalled having played or run Death on the Reich. It is back. It is in the companion. So do want to point that out. The Maria Borger, which I have to admit, I have never read the original Death on the Reich. I have only read the director's cut. So I don't know how in-depth this adventure might have been, or I should say this encounter might have been. It is pretty cool, though. I'm going to stay as spoiler-free as I possibly can as we take a peek at this, simply because there are adventure materials in here. There are things going on that are related to not only Death on the Reich, but the Enemy Within campaign. So the largest section of the book is devoted to the rivers. So traveling the rivers, monsters on the rivers, commerce, trading. So we have river navigation. There's a section about building your own boats and barges. So we get into a lot more detail about the rivers and boats. We get a section about the Imperial River Patrol, which are essentially river wardens. So there's a lot in here. We get a lot of NPCs as well that game masters can utilize throughout not only Death on the Reich, but Enemy in Shadows, because Enemy in Shadows, there's some areas in that adventure, there's sections of that adventure where the player characters are traveling by river. So we get some fellow travelers, different NPCs, and they are broken down pretty much by their occupation. And I thought it was kind of interesting where we get actual individual NPCs. We don't just get some stat blocks saying, okay, well, you know, an average cook is like this. An average stevedore is like this. So I like that. As you can see, we've got artwork throughout. The character artwork is in black and white. I know I have mentioned before I'd like to see color, but there are a lot of people out there who really like the black and white because it is a throwback to first edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So we have a section here about river folk. So one thing I find is kind of unusual is, if you can see in the artwork here, for some strange reason, a lot of these NPCs not only have facial scars, but they seem to have stitches. In the artwork, it's like, okay. It's like, there's a lot of facial stitches in the artwork in this book. I don't I don't know. It's like a theme almost. All right, kind of zipping on through here. But there's a lot of really, really good information in here. Here's somebody else who's got facial stitches. So we also have a semaphore service for the Empire as well. So we have these signal towers that we get into a little more depth about, because there is actually a signal tower being built in one of these sections of Death on the Reich. So this kind of goes into more detail about that as well. Here's the section about actually kind of customizing your river craft. I thought that was kind of cool. We get our trading rules as well. Different types of cargo, selling, what is mainly traded and purchased in the Empire. We get some information about smugglers and pirates, as well as more NPCs. So definitely think that there is a lot of really excellent material in here to help flesh out any Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game. You don't have to just be running the Enemy Within campaign at all. We get a bit of a bestiary. There's not a ton of creatures in here, and some of them are actually, like the giant leeches, are featured in Death on the Reich. So this is a bit of a repeat, but that's okay. We got river trolls, waterborne diseases, which I thought was kind of interesting, because the old world is kind of, most of the people aren't nobles. Most of the people aren't well off. They're kind of scraping by day, including many of the player characters. So I thought that was kind of interesting that we have a section about waterborne diseases. So one of the aspects of this that I think is pretty cool is we're going to see, it's a little further on, but there's also a new adventure in here, which you can run kind of like a B plot line while running the Enemy Within. I thought that was kind of interesting. So we get a bit more information about the Red Crown, which is another chaos cult in the Death on the Reich adventure. In fact, starting off with Enemy in Shadows, one of the player characters is the spitting image of this cultist higher up. And supposedly the cult learns, it's the cult of the Purple Hand, learns that this magus or whatever, he's got, a title, has inherited a bunch of money. And of course, they're expecting him to be bringing that money to the cult. And it's mistaken identity. It's really fun. And it's very, very cool. And then the Cult of the Red Crown is another chaos cult that gets involved in the adventure as well into the campaign. So there's the Emperor Leopold. This is the, it's not a royal barge, but it is essentially for higher ups out there as well. And we get some adventure seeds for utilizing that, as well as some cutaway, as well as some maps for the rooms. Vengeance of the Gravelord is this secondary adventure that you can run, like I said, as a B plot line throughout the Enemy Within campaign, or just as a little mini campaign of its own. I understand that we're going to have new chapters in each of the upcoming companions as well. And in Death on the Reich, we have Carrying Up the Reich, which is an adventure that was published by Hogshead Publishing, and it's kind of stitches together Death on the Reich, and then the third chapter in The Enemy Within, which is Power Behind the Throne. That's actually included in the director's cut for Death on the Reich. Funny thing is, and it's actually mentioned in this adventure, is in carrying up the Reik, there is no carrion. So this adventure is to set that right. Actually, the adventure is kind of cool. I could see this being a pretty interesting little side beat as well. But I do want to also mention that The Enemy Within is a relatively complex campaign, especially if you are a new game master, not necessarily new to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but a new game master overall. It can have a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things that you're kind of tracking, especially timelines as well. All right, and then we get an index. We get handouts. We get a new pre-gen character, an outlaw chief, and some ads to wrap up. And then the end paper is another cool map of the Reikland. And that is what we find inside the Death on the Reik companion. Let me swing on over to the other camera. I will share my final thoughts and give this a review score. I like the companion. I think the companion is really, really well done. There's a lot of information that's utilized not only in Enemy Within, but if you're running any Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay adventures or making up your own campaign, there's tons of gameable material in here. Is it essential? Like the book says right on the cover that it's essential. I don't think so. I don't think it is necessarily essential. I know there are some folks out there who are a little disappointed that the director's cut for Death on the Reik does not have the river travel and trading commerce rules in it, because originally it did. The Hogshead Publishing edition of it did as well. Cubicle 7 broke that off and placed it into the companion, which I got to be honest, I really don't have much of an issue with that. I'm just mentioning it because I have heard some folks grumble about it. But I will point out that Death on the Reik makes up for it by including a lot of adventure material that I understand was never in either the first or second editions of Death on the Reik. I like the companion. I think it's very cool. I like the little adventure at the end that you can kind of run as like a background plot as well if you're not overwhelmed by the Enemy Within campaign. I think that's kind of fun. Like I said, there's a lot of cool stuff in this book. I just don't think it is essential if you're running the Enemy Within. That said, I do give it a pretty strong recommendation. I think it's really, really well done. And there's plenty of things in the companion to get Game Master's creative juices flowing as well. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Death on the Reik companion a very solid 8 out of 10. All right. Once again, do want to point out the 126-page hardcover is available, including the PDF from shouldn't say Drive-Thru RPG, Cubicle 7 Entertainment's website, because that's the only way you're going to get the hardcover and PDF together. Although I think they might have a bits and mortar program. I forget off the top of my head. Anyway, if you just want the PDF, then you would go to Drive-Thru RPG. All right, that's it for this time out. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. If you do, ding that bell. It'll let you know not only when I upload videos such as this, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday through Thursday nights right here on YouTube, as I bring you not only the latest in tabletop gaming news, but first looks at board games, role-playing games, miniatures, rules, and more. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And as I wrap up all my videos during this maybe not never-ending pandemic? I certainly hope all of you out there are being smart and staying safe. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, if you haven't subscribed to the Gaming Gang channel yet, click right here. If you'd like to see the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, click right up there. And if you want to trust YouTube's algorithm to give you something to watch, click right there. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and everybody please wear a mask.